Okay, we're good to go.
Hello everyone, good evening, or is it good afternoon? Hard to tell. But anyway, welcome to our Facebook live event for the Primary Ask NSEAD. And this evening, we have several guests joining us to tell us about an exciting new project that is linked to museums and has a particular focus on wildlife for primary schools. So I'm delighted to have our experts here with us to tell us all about how the project's going to work and to give you ideas for your practice, for your teaching. And there's also a join along activity as well to give you a flavour of the sorts of things you might want to bring into your classroom with your children. So I'm going to start by handing over to Sam Cairns, who is going to tell us all about how the project came together and how it could be of benefit to you in your schools. So thank you so much, Sam, for joining us.
Thanks so much. Just share my screen and I will explain a bit more. Just while I'm explaining a few things, you might want to get resources ready to take part in our fun activity, which is going to, the thing you will need is a drawing implement, pencil, pen, and a sheet of paper. And that's all you need to take part. But just to tell you a bit more about the Wild Escape. So I'm Sam Cairns, I'm the learning producer for the Wild Escape, which is being led by Art Fund, but we're working with hundreds of museums and galleries across the UK. So in terms of what is it, Wild Escape's been inspired by the Wild Isles, which is going to be a BBC documentary presented by David Attenborough, which will be being broadcast in March this year. So your children should hear about it and see about it in the coming months. And there's going to be 5 different programmes looking at different animals across our Wild Isles. So the reason that we're doing the Wild Escape was because we're really interested in how you get children, I mean, they're often very excited about climate change, but how you encourage children to love and nurture our amazing wildlife. And we know that if children have creatively engaged in it and feel ownership of it, they're much more likely as they grow up to want to try and preserve it and look after it. So the Wild Escape, we're inviting primary age school children. We've put lots of things together specifically aimed at 7 to 11-year-olds, but it kind of bleeds either direction. And we're asking them to go to a local museum or gallery, find a creature in the gallery or the museum and imagining its journey to a different habitat. How might it escape the museum and go somewhere different? We've created lots of different resources to help you do this piece of work. And there's going to also be a big collective artwork across the UK, which you can contribute your animals, your creatures to. That's going to be called the Wild World. And what we're asking is to do an activity to imagine these animals, to draw them in some way, and then you can send them to us at Art Fund and we will upload them into the Wild World, which is going to go live on Earth Day on the 22nd of April, and you'll be able to see the animals in the Wild World and follow them as they move around the different habitats in there. So we'll explain a bit more about that at the end, but I'm going to pass over to Hester now, who is from LICAF, which is the Lakes International Comic Art Festival. And we worked with them creating a resource on a comic challenge where you could, it's guided activity that you could either do in a museum, or if you wanted to, you can do it back in your school and find animals either online, perhaps through museum collections. National Gallery has a great online resource that you can see, or Google Arts and Culture, but to find your animal and have a go at drawing it. So I'm going to hand over to Hester now to talk you through the 4-panel comic challenge.
Thank you very much. Cheers. So I'm Hester Harrington. I am a secondary school art teacher and then, part-time, and then also an arts educator for the Lakes International Comic Art Festival. I co-produce and sort out the education side of things for kids and families and educators. And we have an annual festival celebrating and exploring comics each year in Bowness in the Lake District, but we work sort of year round on a calendar of events, designing resources and sharing them in partnership like we are here today. So as a brief overview, as comics as a vehicle for learning in the classroom, I think that before I kind of found my feet with comics just as an art teacher myself, it's pretty easy to be outfaced or met by stereotypes of like what a comic is, and they don't have to be funny and they don't have to feature superheroes. And so hopefully today what I can share with you is a few of their diverse features, but if we kind of strip them down, and we can use them with confidence rather, in the classroom. And there is a real emphasis with this activity that you don't have to have an interest or be a comics reader. You don't have to have a prior knowledge of comics. You don't need to be a buff at drawing. It's the process of creating something. So being a skilled comics nerd is not a prerequisite. So we're going to concentrate today on using limited panels. We're just going to use 4 panels. They're the boxes that you kind of use to stick your images in when you're looking at creating a comic. We're going to look at using sequence. We're going to look at using a narrative or storytelling within our comic, and we're going to have this wordless silent aspect. So we don't need to go down the road of loads of speech bubbles and text if you don't want to, but you can kind of add noises or different labels in there, like signs if you need to, just to make something a little bit clearer. And if we could take a look at that first picture, which has got a really wonderful example. This is by Clarice Tudor, who's designed this specially for the Wildscape. And she's a young artist, a British artist. And this is a really great lead into the activity because you've got 4 panels. We've left the last one blank. We do have it as a completed comic, but this is a really great way to kind of demonstrate how you can look at a 4-panel comic, really easy way to tell a story, and use this idea of this in the classroom or this in the museum. You can use this to kind of scaffold the idea of this is what you're leading up to. So a comic, as you can see, doesn't always need to be a book or a finished, like big page turner. It can be just a simple flat piece of paper with your 4 panels on. And so with this 4-panel idea, you can have lots of differentiated approaches. And the easiest way to do is to kind of give this to your youngsters and kind of go, what do you think happens in that 4th panel? You've got your little badger that's in a picture frame, obviously in the museum or gallery, is making his way to a different habitat. And so for all intents and purposes this evening, I want you to take a few moments to reflect on where you think that badger ends up. And if you make a note of what your suggestion is, it'd be really good if you could share those afterwards. I think, Sam, when you and I spoke about this, it doesn't even need to be for this evening, and even in the classroom, it doesn't need to be directed towards prior knowledge of like wildlife and biodiversity. It could just be used as an imaginative experiment, but you can make those cross-curricular links with anything that you've got going on with lifestyles or life cycle, or geography, creative writing. So have a little think about where you think that badger may end up, and we may or may not show you later on this afternoon what actually does happen in the end. So as an activity in the classroom, there is lots of different starting points that you can use, as Sam mentioned, for that first slide, or first panel rather. And when I did this, I took a taxidermy hedgehog that was in a diorama big case into school, which I was able to hire from my local museum in Kendal. And obviously there's lots of online places if you can't make it into a gallery yourself. But for this evening, we're going to do it completely independently, and you can emulate this with pupils. If you didn't want to do it you could do it as a homework as well. So you could do this and ask them to find an inspirational object at home. And this is what we are going to now ask you to do. So you need to jump out of your chairs and find an object. And I don't know, Sam, have you got something to hand? I have something. I'm going to give you 1 minute. Everybody, go and run. Find an object that has an animal or an insect or a bird, anything on it that can be your starting point. So this is your artifact. It could be, obviously, you're in a gallery or museum, it could be a picture, it could be a cushion. If you're at home, it could be a greetings card, it could be a picture off the wall, it could be a cuddly toy. Anything, go and find something. Go, you've got a minute. And so this gives us the opportunity to kind of say you can get your inspiration from a number of different places. Yes, as an educator, I can bring my taxidermy hedgehog, which was very exciting, into the classroom. If you're not able to go to a gallery or a museum, but you can find objects, artifacts at home, at classrooms, in school, in the library, book covers. Oh, here we go. What's Sam got? She's got a beautiful cushion. Is that the Strawberry Thief? Fantastic. And I've got my Angela Harding, The Year Unfolding. I've got my rabbit on there. So, or is it a hare? No, it's a hare. And I've got my swifts. I've got my birds. So
I want to know if Michelle's found anything.
Say again, Sam.
That's a good question, Sam. I do have the same print on a cushion in my room, but I do also naughtily already have an idea in my head about what I'm pretty prepared.
Well, we like to have that element of surprise. So you can use Sam's inspiration. You can, if you know where you've got an object, you can go with that one. That's okay. So in this activity, we're going to draw our own 4-panel comic. If you've got something that you can print offline, that's great. If not, you need to draw yourself 4 panels, like Clarice has done, on a piece of paper, pen or pencil. And in that first box, which we're calling a panel, you are going to draw your object of inspiration. You can draw it just the object within the panel. I'm going to give you 3 minutes to do this, or thereabouts. It would be, as long as you can kind of see maybe what the object is that you're getting reference from. It's entirely up to you whether, like Clarice's, the creature has come to life. Yeah, this is quite difficult to draw and talk at the same time. And I think it's worth noting at this point as well that when you come to draw your character, your wildlife creature, you can draw it in part, in segments, like Clarice has done with the badger kind of peeping its head round the picture frame. Or you can take a different camera angle, you can have the whole thing, you can have part of the thing, you could have just the legs walking off screen. I think as long as it's really clear in the first panel what the object of inspiration is, and so we can see from Clarice's that is indeed, it's a picture and it's hanging on a wall, and you can make reference to what that creature is in the first panel. That would be really helpful. And then at some point throughout your 4 panels, I think it's really helpful if you encourage your youngsters to, at least within 1 panel, draw their character, their creature in its entirety. So not as Clarice has done in that first one, where the badger's sticking its head. If you just had segments of an animal the whole way through, and we'll explain about why that's important a little bit later on. But for the first one, you should have, hopefully, your creature drawn on your object. I'm just trying to, I don't know if I can draw and talk at the same time and get through this.
Esther, just so that you draw, I'll take it. Do you want me, because we've got some questions that were helpful prompts as well. Do you want me to
Lovely.
share?
Yeah. Here we go. So that's, if we just take a look, I'm just looking at timing wise now, we'll have enough time for people to draw their first panel, and that is obviously where your creature is at. But for this evening, I think it's a bit of a long shot for everybody to draw all 4 panels. If you can, then that's amazing. But here you can see how you can scaffold this activity with your youngsters. Even before they start drawing, they can work their way through these prompts, and this helps you storyboard and build up your narrative. So for panels 2 and 3 this evening, just use those questions and write your answers down for panels 2 and 3. So you can write it down underneath, sort of like leave like 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can annotate around the side of your comic panels, or you could just write in your second and third panel. And to create that sequence in that second and third panel, you need to be encouraging your youngster to think, right, how do I get from panel 1, which is your place of inspiration, your creature, how does it leave? And in this case, you know, this is the worksheet as it would be the museum, but you could say, how does it leave your home, the classroom, the library, the online resource that you found on the computer. And where does it go? So that third panel needs to be that transition between its previous habitat or location and its way to the fourth panel, which is obviously its final destination. So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to think about how you would answer those prompts. Make a little note on your little worksheet. And like I said, this can be a silent comic, so it doesn't need to have words and speech bubbles. And if you have those prompts at the bottom of a pre-printed worksheet, it means that there is just that little bit of written annotation to help support the ideas and the building of the narrative and the sequence that the youngsters are creating. And within this idea of heading to panel number 4, this is where you can start drawing again, should you wish. If I give you 3 minutes to work on panel number 4, that is that idea of where does your animal, now that it's come to life, it's emerged out of the cushion that came to life as a teddy bear on a bed or whatever the cuddly toy was, or jumped out of a greetings card or a book or a painting or a diorama, where does it want to go? And we've used purposefully the terminology a different habitat to leave it completely open so that there isn't that necessity for it to be rural or urban, or but it gives you the opportunity to tie it in with, if you so wish, then that started as a conversation starter for biodiversity and thinking about any links to the programmes with David Attenborough. And I think as well, it could just be an opportunity to do this and it be a storytelling activity using your imagination. And if we move on to that final slide, Sam, this just allows me just to show you where Clarice Tudor's badger ends up.
I realised I spoilt the big reveal there.
No, it's fine. Yeah, you can see obviously here in this final panel, Clarice hasn't drawn her entire badger. Just having its front paws and its head is enough to indicate that it's made it to a different habitat. Clarice's example is obviously really 2D and she draws digitally, but I do feel that this activity could be done it could be done in collage. The first panel, you could provide the inspiration as a photograph of the artifact, and it could be then done in mixed media with a combination of drawing if the first panel's filled in with a photograph. It can be done as a collaboration, where you're passing the piece of paper around and different pupils are coming up with different scenarios for different panels. And scale wise, obviously, if you're in an art gallery or museum, A4 onto a clipboard works perfectly. But if you're working in a classroom, there's no reason why each of these panels can't be huge and they could be done as paintings. Just as some little reminders of things which I think are really like key tips, is that starting inspiration can, as we said, can come from various different sources. We are focusing in the Wild Escape on UK wildlife, but if you're doing this activity at home, be prepared to have things like tigers, which are obviously not UK wildlife, feature in, which is fine if you're going to go down an imaginative storytelling route. But I think for part of the digital collaboration, we're looking to celebrate UK wildlife that's not extinct, so something that you can find somewhere in the British Isles, and that is obviously as part of the World Earth Day collaborative bit. One whole creature within a panel is imperative, because Sam will tell you what to do with that in just a moment, and use this comic as a vehicle to support your learning. So it's not just a separate activity, you can embed ongoing learning, you can make those links that you may have to life cycles, habitats, biodiversity, but you can, like I said, use it for imagination as well. And that differentiation, when you're scaffolding this activity in your classroom, you can give them clarities with that fourth panel blanked out as a great intro. You can do that as a little group, and then you can build it up, like I said, using the template, the blank one, but put your own photograph in at the start, or you can just give them the 4 prompts, storyboard it, and then 4 blank panels, and off they go. So thank you for your time. I'm going to hand back over to Sam, and she's going to tell you what you can do with, like in panel 2 and panel 3 of Claris's, where you've got a full creature, what we can do with that, not just as a comic, but as it ties in with a different piece of work. So thank you, and any questions, just let us know. I think, yeah, Sam, you do where you can share these out with the hashtags. Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, Hester. Yes, so just to say that there is on our website, which is thewildescape.org.uk, there is also the different types of worksheets available. So you saw the one with all the panels blank. There's also one with just one blank, and sort of different ways of scaffolding the activity if you want to use that. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about that in a sec. But moving on, just to tell you a bit more about how you might want to take part in the Wild Escape. So obviously the comic challenge is one part of that, and we've provided all the support and resources, and they're on the website if you'd like to do that. We also have other ways that you can get involved. So if you go to our website, thewildescape.org.uk, you can plan a visit. There's a map available. And as I said, there's hundreds of museums across the UK who are taking part in this and offering Wild Escape workshops, activities, all sorts of different things, all relevant to their collections and what they have local to you. So go to the website, have a look at the map, see who's doing stuff near you. You can also use our teacher resources to run an activity in your own classroom. And as I've already mentioned, in terms of inspiration there's lots of online materials available that you can use. So Google Arts and Culture, you can actually walk around galleries and pick paintings collectively that you might want to be inspired by, or you can go to local museums and see what's in their collections, or places like the National Gallery has a really large online resource that you can use. Or you could even use pictures that you'd taken. I went to Pompeii recently, and there were some amazing carvings with little snails in and birds and mice that I thought could be a really fun starting point. The other way that you can take part, so going on a visit, using resources at school, we're also running a live lesson in partnership with the World Wildlife Fund and RSPB, which is happening on the 22nd of March. So for that live lesson, which is called Creatures and Creativity, you can so you can register for that on the World Wildlife Fund website. And I checked, if you Google Exploring Our Wild Isles, Creatures and Creativity, you will find the login to be able to go to there and register to get the Zoom link to take part in that webinar. It's going to be great. We've just been talking about the artists and the scientists who are going to be looking at that, and we're going to be focusing on themes around mini beasts, food webs, those sorts of areas of science, and then thinking about how you can incorporate art within that, and how art inspires us and the natural world inspires us, and how you can link the science and the art together in that STEAM way. The other resources that we have available are the comic challenge that we've just talked you through, and there's a lesson plan and lots of information that Hester's helped us put together that's available on the website. We've also got work around creating a story. So if you want to do more of a literacy focused activity, we've got some work from the Story Museum, and also there's guidance around different activities that you could use as starter activities around learning about habitats and other things in the science curriculum, so food webs and so on, from the Natural History Museum. They're not in the teacher specific section. If you just go to the general resources tab, you'll find that Discover Your Local Nature from the Natural History Museum. I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Sarah, who's also on the call, who's going to talk about a broader offer that we also have from Art Fund that we think might help support your work, not just with the Wild Escape, but perhaps more broadly around what you're doing. So Sarah, are you good to take over? I know Sarah had some issues with mute.
Hi, thanks, Sam. Yes, just briefly from me to let you know that Teacher Art Pass will be launching soon. So Teacher Art Pass is going to offer the benefits of the National Art Pass at a significantly reduced price for teachers. So you might not know much about Art Fund. Art Fund is a national charity for art. We support museums and galleries to acquire works of art into their collections. We support museum staff, and we support widening public access to art among the public with our National Art Pass, which offers brilliant discounts to all of our amazing museums and galleries across the UK. So over 250 museums, you'll get free or reduced price entry, plus 50% off major exhibitions. And as part of Art Pass membership, you'd also receive Art in Your Inbox with fortnightly updates on what to see and do across the UK, and the Art Map, which is a comprehensive guidebook on using your pass at over 800 cultural destinations across the UK. So we'd love it if you signed up to be the first to know when we launch Teacher Art Pass. You can do that on the Wild Escape website in the Take Part area. If you do register to take part in the Wild Escape, you'll also be signed up to hear about Teacher Art Pass when it does launch. And I'll just finish by saying this has come off the back of a year of research and development, where we work with 1,000 teachers to identify what might support them in using museums and galleries more often in their collections. And we found that they really found the benefits of the Art Pass useful, particularly in raising awareness of just what was on at museums and galleries, because many shared that it was quite difficult to find that information. So this is just the start of the support that we really hope to provide teachers going forwards. So yeah, do watch this space and check in on Teacher Art Pass. We hope to bring it to you very soon.
So that's everything from us. I don't know if there's been any questions coming. We're really happy to answer them and maybe pick them up in the future. Not now.
Thank you so much, Sam, Hester and Sarah. That's excellent. I mean, you managed to cram in just so much inspiration and guidance into I'm very impressed with your coordination, but also what a fantastic project. I mean, there's lovely cross-curricular links. I've seen the website, which I think is fantastic. It's beautifully presented. There's so much content on there. It seems really really easy to interact with, which I think is great when you're a busy teacher. You don't want something complicated. And it looks like you've provided some really great resources as a starting point that can be adapted, which is what teachers want, you know, so they can feel they've got some ideas, but they can also take ownership as well. So you've got links to so many different curriculum subjects, and of course a really kind of topical area of concern around the environment and children and young people's love of small creatures and how they want to care for them, and how it ties into all these kind of bigger events. And I think what Sarah was saying there about getting into gallery, getting into museums if you can, is so important. And I was just thinking with Hester's comic activity, her suggestion to go and find something to do some observational work as a starting point is so useful. And that's where, if you're in a gallery or museum space, you've got something in front of you you can really kind of engage with, and whether that's sketching or taking a photo or writing some notes. So I'm really happy to share my little comic. I did manage to finish a comic, but as I say, I pre-prepared an idea and I cheated slightly, but I did follow Hester's recommendation. So at work, I've got a series of mugs with seagulls on. Oh. So I remembered my mug with my seagull. And then I thought, gosh, I have a picture in my head of what a seagull looks like. It didn't turn out like that. But anyway, so that's a fun one. But also I'd seen a YouTube video where a seagull goes into a supermarket and helps itself to some crisps. You've probably seen a million ones like this. So that was my my concept. So I've got my seagull mug, escapes out the window, goes into the supermarket and grabs some crisps. So I know it doesn't look like a seagull, but
that is really impressive.
Really impressive. So I cheated a little bit, but really fun. Fun. And that's such a great starting point for all kinds of conversations about, you know, animals. And you said it didn't have to have a comedy element, but certainly this kind of story and how do you get from here to there, and why would you choose that animal? And it's just overwhelming how many kind of different
You should
kind of.
you should also take a picture of your seagull and you can add it to the wild world. And
Okay.
As it travels
Even
around.
though it looks like a duck, but that's what you want, you know, as an art activity. You also want that you want the pupils to be critiquing what they're doing, because that story, you know, that comic activity can be a starting point for some ideas that they might develop into an animation, for example. But as I say, the website, I can't commend the website more highly. And the fact it's so beautifully joined up. I mean, the teacher art pass sounds like a really exciting opportunity. And I'm sure teachers would want to take that up and perhaps use it in their own time. Is that something they can do, Sarah? They don't have to be with a class if they want to go and check out some of these exhibitions and activities.
No, actually, it's specifically just for their personal use. So we imagine they might use it based off of our research for researching as part of what they need to deliver in the classroom. But really, it's kind of for their own personal inspiration and giving them the opportunity to just access all that great information and inspiration that you find in museums and galleries for less.
That's wonderful. We didn't have any questions come in. I'm sure probably like me, it's kind of like there's so much to process. But as I said, the website is brilliant, and there's lots of follow-up kind of resources and get in touch and this kind of thing. So it seems super well organised, and it seems like a really excellent resource, not only for art but for learning across the wider curriculum. So thank you so much for coming along and sharing your work with us, and also for your amazing organisation, you know, how you coordinated all that information and to get a practical activity in as well was really impressive. So thank you so much. I haven't had a time signal from Diane yet, but we're over the half hour. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else.
I was just going to say the idea that you can kill kind of two birds with one stone, although that is not a very good phrase for the wildscape at all, actually. If within your comic panel, like you've done, you have one panel where you've got your full creature. Sam, did you want to explain where that they can upload their character to the digital collaborative piece?
I know our time is kind of up, so what I will say is if you register on the Wild Escape website, you'll be sent information about how you can send in your children's animals and yours and get them into the wild world for Earth Day on the 22nd of April and see them moving around over the start of the summer term.
Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate your time and your enthusiasm, and best of luck with the project. I'm sure it'll be a brilliant success. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.